Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Friday night. We got a fresh episode of the Creative Cranium coming at you. It's going to be a great show tonight. I got some terrific guests. Our topic tonight is, what is your why? It's a little bit of an existential question. What I mean by that is that there's many things that we could be doing as creators, many profitable things. We could have all been doctors or surgeons, but for some reason, we all became creative. So I kind of want to know why we did it. And I've got some great people to ask. One of my friends from the Baltimore Comic-Con circuit, Mr. KJ Kaminski. Welcome to the show, KJ.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Man, it's so good to see you. And we know each other, but for the people that are sort of meeting you for the first time tonight, would you mind introducing yourself and tell us what you're mostly known for?
Well, I'm KJ Kaminski. I am the publisher and co-creator head creator of Big Blue Comics. And I write a number of titles, specifically The Resistance, Hyperaction, and Sophia Saturn. And the latest one, The Resistance, we're doing a new story arc on Kickstarter now.
Perfect. I can't wait to hear more about that. As I've mentioned to KJ before, I'm a fan of your work. I followed Sophia Saturn too. That's good stuff.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Got a shout out to the sci-fi people, man. We got to look out.
Mutual Admiration Society.
Yeah, thanks, brother. So, and I got another special guest. I was familiar with his work, but I'm meeting him now for the first time. Please say hello to Jerry Carita. Jerry, how you doing?
I'm doing lovely. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's great to meet you finally. I was familiar with your project, Cicada Samurai, correct?
Yeah, that's it. You got it.
But this is the first time we're meeting. So if you don't mind, let's do the same thing. Could you introduce yourself and tell us what you're kind of known for?
My name is Jerry Carita. I'm the founder of Thorny Comics, which is the new imprint to publish my own creator-owned stuff. Mostly. I'm going to be doing a lot of other stuff too. And I mean, mostly Cicada Samurai is my first book. It's the first thing I've published myself. It's the first thing I've written. I've been working with a company called Blue Juice Comics as an editor for the last 2 years and co-publisher. And prior to that, and still currently, I'm a television producer.
Oh, cool.
So
I think I read that in your bio. You're in the reality TV business?
Yes, sir. And actually, that's how I got into comics. My first, one of the shows I worked on a long time ago is Comic Book Man.
Oh, awesome.
So, yeah.
Wow, interesting. Well, welcome to the show, Jerry, and I look forward to learning more about your work.
Thank you, sir.
So my next guest I'm just meeting for the first time. I can't wait to hear more about it. Please say hello to Phoebe Xavier. How you doing, Phoebe?
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Welcome, welcome. So you and I are meeting for the first time. So could you please introduce yourself and tell us what you are mostly known for?
I am the founder and editor-in-chief of 123 Go Publications. And we put out mostly comic books, although I did self-publish my first book this past year, which is available in the same place as all my books, my comic books. And I'm here tonight to talk about the why, I guess, but also to promote my current Kickstarter, which is called Vikings Saga of the North.
Excellent, excellent. And when you get a chance, would you send me a link to that project in the private chat, and I'll start putting it up on the air? Because what we want to do is not only to learn about you guys, but about your projects as well, and see if we can drum up a couple of extra customers. So I'm going to dive right into the questions. I got some great questions. I'm going to start with KJ. So KJ, how long have you been doing this?
When you say this,
being a comic book creator and publisher.
Well, I actually published back in the late 90s with some friends from high school. The Resistance is a series that I co-created in high school with one of my best friends, Jason Krause. And at that time, we published a couple books and a bunch of ash cans. I went into the retail side, went into music for a little bit. And in 2012, I came back to comics and decided I want to do this. And I've been publishing my own books since 2017.
Interesting.
And we're looking at, I guess, our 14th release now.
Solid, solid. You and I are on kind of a similar track, I always noticed.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind me asking, right before you got into comics, you said you were in music a little bit?
Well, I've just always had a love of music. I mean, all through school, I was in musical theater and choir. And when I was in my early 20s, I had a garage band.
What do you play, Kyle? What do you play, KJ?
I played guitar, not very well, but I kind of approached comics and music the same way. I wrote the songs, I played guitar, and I sang, and all I needed was a drummer and a bass player to go and play a show. And I kind of look at comics that way too. I do all the production work, so I'm the writer and I do all the lettering and put the books together. So all I need is an artist and a colorist, and we have a comic.
Nice. That's
But
pretty
yeah,
cool, man.
I got into. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
No, it's quite all right. I was going to say, there's an interesting analogy between. I got 2 Phoebes. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you close one of them?
Yeah, Pop's got it.
Thank you. I had trouble getting back.
That's okay. A little technical difficulties is usually standard operating procedure. I'm just glad you're here.
Thank you.
So, yeah, let's jump over to Jerry too and approach it the same way. So, Jerry, you said you were a TV producer, right?
Yes.
But you still currently do that now.
Yeah, actually, I'm wrapping up on an A&E true crime series right now.
Oh, nice. Which one?
It hasn't aired yet. It's called Undercover Caught on Tape. I think it premieres in November.
Oh, wow. That sounds like something I would like.
Yeah, it's
I love true crime. But I got to ask you the question, right? So obviously a talented fella, you can do a lot of things. Why comics?
It's honestly because of some of the shows I've produced. I worked on Comic Book Men. I did not grow up reading comics. My geek thing as a kid was television. I watched a lot of Star Trek: The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and stuff like that, and then later Buffy the Vampire Slayer, things like that. So it wasn't until I was on set for Comic Book Men. We were in a comic shop. It was for AMC, and The Walking Dead was around, and I started reading The Walking Dead, and so that's really the first comic that I read with intention. I was like, I'm going to read all of this, and I did. Up until that point, and I've kept up with it ever since. But then, I went from there to reading Capes and Tights, and then I went from there to indie books, but that was kind of how I fell in love with it. And as a TV producer, a lot of people in reality TV are basically film writers and directors who are frustrated and end up needing a day job, so they go into reality TV. Or at least that used to be the case,
Okay.
when I was coming up.
I see.
And so I had all these ideas for things that were stories that I wanted to write and direct and produce. But no studio is going to give me $300 million to make a time travel epic. So, so I was like, I was looking around at all these comic books, and I was like, this is amazing. You can tell these great stories, and the elements of storytelling are the same no matter where you're telling them. So the screenwriters talk about the same kind of telling, a story arc and all that stuff. So I just started applying what I knew to this, and I can tell a story about a martial arts anthropomorphic bug who fights giant razor-beaked ravens and all this stuff, and there's nobody giving me network notes, and there's no budget to worry about apart from the art, obviously.
Neat.
But
Yeah.
I just fell in love with that. You could do anything in a comic book, and it's if you have 2 people talking in a room, or you have one of them blowing up the sun, it's the same budget, more or less, So
yeah, and I've said before, the screenplay and the comic book script are very close cousins.
Yeah, they're similar. That's actually something I was just talking to somebody else about. I actually found that a little bit. What's different about it, and maybe you if you've worked in both, you can tell me if you agree. In television or in a movie, you write a script, and then that's the Bible for anywhere from 50 to 300 people. The props, the lighting, the camera, the wardrobe, everyone's taking their cue from that script. Whereas if you're writing a script for a comic artist, you're really just writing that script for one person.
Yeah.
So you can have little asides in there, and you can put references in there, and you can do things like that you can't really do in a TV script. You have to describe what you want in the TV script, and then it's locked, and it can never change because 300 people went out and bought supplies to make that thing that you wrote on the paper.
Yeah,
and
for real.
In a comic book, you can just call up and go, "Hey, man, so that part where you penciled in the
could you make her facing the other way? The window should be open.
I want to make it a dinosaur instead of a lion. Can you do that?" And it's like, yeah,
Right,
just give me a day. I'll turn it around. No big deal, So it's a little different, but it is, I write my comic scripts in Final Draft, which is what I've always written all my TV scripts into.
Yeah.
So.
I used a trial version of Final Draft. And by the way, I really like it until I realized, wait a minute, I can make all these things on a Google Doc. So now I use Google. By the way, that's nothing against Final Draft.
No, it's great. And I just liked that I downloaded a template for comics, and I just ran with that. Yeah. But I had to tailor it for myself too. It really is. I mean, you can write a screenplay that way too. It really is just tabs and margins.
Yeah. Find one you like and copy it.
I use TextEdit. I
Said it.
start with
That's it.
page 1, panel 1.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
great.
Page 1, panel
I
1.
love writing those things.
So let's jump over to Phoebe. So Phoebe, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
So now, how long roughly have you been in a creative career?
Oh, well, before I did comic books, I did music for a long time.
Cool. What kind of music?
Yeah, hip hop mostly. I also did a vapor wave album at one point. But I DJ a little bit, like with various styles of music. But yeah, I hit 40 or was about to hit 40. Was like, I'm not gonna make it as a huge rock star, so let me find something that I could still do in my 60s and express myself creatively. Actually, I had it on my bucket list for 20 years was write for the X-Men. And even if I never get to do that, at least I'm doing my own comic books that I love.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And again, you have illustrated the curious link between music and comics. So I appreciate you sharing that. It comes up almost every week that I'm in a room with 3 other musicians. And I don't know why they're so closely linked, but they definitely are. And I've said before, each page, we always call it the beat of the page. Maybe some other people do too. But man, it starts with the snare and you get to the guitar in the middle. And that last panel is the cymbal. If you can write a song, you can make a comic page. They're very similar, I think.
I think
I look forward to.
I know that the Wu-Tang Clan references comic books a lot. What's his name? Method Man's nickname is Johnny Blaze, and Inspector Deck's first famous line was "swinging through your neighborhood like your swing through like your neighborhood Spider-Man" or whatever. So yeah, I think a lot of musicians grew up inspired by the same stuff that we did: X-Men, Spider-Man, Batman, etc.
Speaking of musicians, there's our pal John Westhoff, Drumsticks of Doom. What's up, John? So let's jump back to KJ. So this is roughly the 90s. The Resistance begins to take shape then?
Yeah. We actually published a couple books in 95 and 96.
And it was self-published?
Yeah. At that time, it wasn't easy to make comics.
What do you mean by that?
You didn't have Google. You had to figure out a lot of things about comics that we started in middle school, I believe it was, when me and my friends started getting together and creating our own comics and talking about the future of what we were going to do. And so, by 18, we were ready to hit shows, and that's when we started bringing out ash cans.
Okay.
But there was a big learning curve in publishing. I mean, even to find a printer, it was really hard. And we had my co-creator Jason Krause, his girlfriend at the time, Nicole Worth, who she was going to a local college in our college, and so she had all the design knowledge, and she helped us through all of that. That there's no way we would have been able to put out a comic at that time.
So let me ask you a question about the school years. Let's see if we can dial that back a little bit. So it's you and your buddy Jason, right? And
yeah,
you guys
sorry
are
if I'm nonlinear.
No. I'm super nonlinear. You probably noticed, but I'm very interested in how. So you had a partner. That must be awesome. But so you guys are what, 10th grade, 11th grade? Where about are you here?
Right yeah, well, actually 8th grade.
8th grade. Wow.
Yeah.
So this makes it an even better question. So you knew that you loved comics, but what was it that made you say, you know what, I want to make one of these? Do you remember that moment that said, I want to do this?
Yeah. I was 12. It was actually in 6th grade. And that's when people were asking, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I want to work in comics. I don't know what it will be, but someday I'll work in comics. And at 16, I started selling comics and toys at conventions. And then 17, I got a job at a local comic shop. And eventually I had my own shop, but that was after we published and stuff. And yeah, comics have just always been my thing. Yeah,
that's really cool, man. I tell you, it shows in your work, because one of the things that I have always said about the Resistance, you guys have some top-notch design work. Like it's a slick product, and I don't mean that in any disparaging way. It's like professionally produced, terrific colors, professional lettering. It looks good.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to the artists and colorists that I've worked with so far. But yeah, and my co-creator Jason Krause, he's responsible for most of the designs. And he's just tapped into, I don't know, just so many influences that have just gotten bigger over the years, from everything from, you know, Saturday morning cartoons and Star Wars and anime back in the 90s, you know, watching anime and reading manga before it was huge.
Such a huge thing, right?
Yeah.
So, and in this case, so you're primarily the writer and creator. Do you do any art?
Not technically. I mean, I do all the lettering, logo
Oh, I didn't know that.
design. Yeah, and I put the book together. So inside, front covers, ads, all that kind of stuff.
Good.
You know, at one point I wanted to be a comic book artist. That, you know, at 12, I knew I wanted to work in comics, but I definitely thought I would be an artist.
Gotcha.
And then when I started getting together with my co-creator, his talent was just so much farther. And
So
I said,
a good bit of your success then and motivation is you have this partner to thank. He's really helped you get there.
oh yeah, at the beginning, yeah. He's not so much involved nowadays. I mean, he's done a lot of like Big Blue Comics is just me.
Oh, gotcha. Was he at the convention? I don't think I met this person.
No, not in Baltimore. Every once in a
Okay.
while, he'll show up in Detroit. He still lives in Michigan.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you know, he's the co-creator. Like, we wouldn't have the Resistance without him, of course. And yeah,
Sure.
back in those days, the Nicole and Jason, I mean, they were responsible for. I was the publisher, but you know, I wouldn't have been able to do it on my own in those days.
Yeah, I know that feeling. So let's jump over to Jerry. So Jerry, you're a television producer, right? And you
Yes.
start having the idea of, you're working on Comic Book Men, is that when you got the idea?
For this book,
Oh, if it wasn't that, let's rewind. I want to hear when you very first got the idea that you want to make a comic.
oh yeah, no, that was comic book man. That was when I first started getting excited about the medium and reading it, and then I spent the next 10 years just, you know, voraciously reading everything that I didn't read when I was a kid. So like everything that was already in the movies, all the X-Men movies, I went back and read the entire Chris Claremont run on the
That's
X-Men.
a good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
So, you know, and I got like really a lot of, you know, some people will get like will get annoyed about, you know, when creative teams change and they reboot things over and over again. But because I read everything out of order that way, it's kind of like I've always looked at that as a benefit, you know.
Have you ever, when you were doing your voracious reading and you're looking through stacks and stacks of comics, was there one in particular when you, and same again, you're primarily the writer, correct?
Right.
Okay.
I am
When you're
only
looking-
the writer. I am not the artist.
Yeah, don't feel bad. That's me too. So when you're going through there, you're looking at, admittedly, great writing. I'm a Claremont fan, and I assume you went through some of the titans of the industry. Was there anything that actually made you stop and say, wait a second, I want my book to be like this? And if so, what was it?
You know, I think it was probably when I started reading some Ninja Turtles, because it had more of a sense of humor to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the older Marvel stuff, like the Marvel stuff, didn't really develop a sense of humor until much more recently.
Yeah, early Marvel's pretty serious.
Yeah, it was pretty serious, and like, you know, Wolverine would say something funny from time to time, and you know, they'd have a couple of lines. And like once Deadpool became a bigger character and was introduced, it had a really hardcore sense of humor. But you know, that's kind of what I've liked about indie books is that all the indie books you can kind of change tone a little bit more seamlessly. Like, you know, when you're writing something someone else owned, you can't like give Batman a goofball sense of humor. It just doesn't make sense, you know.
Yeah.
But so I
I'm
enjoy
not a
reading.
fan of you know, this always comes up, and you know, there's always reboots and remakings of characters, which I used to kind of like, but I feel like that's gotten a little bit off the chain in recent years. And it was Neil Gaiman who said, which he should probably apply this to his own work, but he said that, hey, remember, there's elements of your character when you design it that somebody must have liked, and if if the character makes it big, be careful with changing it. Like like when I started reading the Batman, I delved pretty deep into Batman, all the old books and what was going on at the time. It was right when they had just done a reboot, so it was actually kind of, as someone who hadn't read all the old stories but everyone knows the Batman story, it was the New 52. Oh, so I like that one too.
Yeah, it's great. And so Scott Snyder had just started writing the book, and he kind of had his own slightly different take on the character, but it very much talks about this a lot, where it's like there are elements obviously of Batman that you shouldn't change because there are things that make him Batman, and people love those things. But you can make him a little more cerebral. You can focus on his detective work as opposed to his superhero work. You can kind of do things like that. But But yeah, I kind of got on board right in the middle of a reboot. So the idea of a reboot doesn't really bother me. But
that's a pretty good reboot, admittedly.
Yeah.
I was kind of suggesting maybe some of them haven't been too good.
But
sure. I know a lot of people didn't love the New 52, but I kind of liked it, and I sense you liked it too.
I mean, it was the only thing I knew at first, and now it's one of my favorite Batmans because it's the one I read first. You kind of fall in love. It's like people really love the Tim Burton Batman movie for the same reason. It's the first one that was there,
right?
But like, I think other ones are probably better films.
Yeah. Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed because I don't have that. I have like favorite movies that are terrible movies because I saw them when I was a kid. So they come with a nostalgia.
Jump off topic. Hold on. Since you brought it up, I've got to ask, and I know it's off topic, but what is one of those movies that you love that is a terrible movie?
Roadhouse.
Oh, okay.
Roadhouse
is a terrible movie.
It's awful. And Roadhouse takes place in an alternate universe where bouncers are famous and where you can tear a man's throat. It's ludicrous. It's so ludicrous. Like
it's entertaining.
The whole movie. The fact that Patrick Swayze is like this big, decided they'll have everyone over and over again go, I thought you'd be taller. It's a ludicrous movie. When he meets the beautiful girl for the first time and she's stitching up the cut under his arm and he's like, pain don't hurt. I'm like, it's the worst. It's just objectively terrible, but I love it because I saw it when I was a kid. So it's like a warm blanket,
Yeah, sure.
So I don't have that for comics. I don't have like the thing that I remember getting me through, the teenage years that I have like a warm feeling about. So I've just been able to kind of look back and enjoy all of it for what's different about it. So, I really liked, I really liked all the Jeff Loeb stories. I kind of worked my way backwards with Batman.
Yeah.
So, I did all the.
Yeah. By the way, the ones that you're choosing are terrific examples.
Hush.
Yeah. Hush.
Oh yeah.
Even I would say probably arguably some of the best examples. I was really more headed toward, when they have, Superman's going to wear a raincoat now and he's going to drive a Jeep. Right. Like, wait, that's not what Superman does. You have to stay true to the mythos. You know what I mean? And I'm even okay with making him weaker or have him go through struggles or I'm even okay with the alternate representations, but you still have to have the core of the characters, what he means. That's why people liked him to begin with, So I'm not saying people shouldn't do it. I'm just saying tread with caution. There's a reason why.
It's hard too, because you don't know where that line is until you're doing it. You might change something and not realize that in your mind, that's not part of Superman's core, but in someone else's mind, you've completely, like if you decide he's from like a different part of Kansas or something, you really anger like half of Superman fans. But to you, that's not what he's about, So I agree with you totally. Though there are things that you really can't mess with too much.
Well, in the New 52, not to harp on that too much, but it was kind of controversial lately. But I really liked it, and here's my 2 cents. The reboot of the New 52 were all by writers who approached the material with sort of like a loving technique, and you could tell that they enjoyed the material. And increasingly, we get a lot of things like, well, I hate comics and they're stupid, so I'm going to make this comic that tears it all to the ground, which I guess I respect that too. I have just a healthy streak of nihilism to where I respect that.
But every time, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
No, I've been talking too much.
I was just going to say, every time this is a great story, like every time there are those reboots, it brings in new readers. It brings people back to the industry. And it never
that's the goal of it.
It's already been said. Like Chris Claremont's run on X-Men will always stand, and it doesn't matter what Hickman is doing now and the rest of the writers.
Yeah, and I like Hickman too. I hope I don't sound like I'm
right.
Most of them I like.
The example that came to my head.
Yeah.
In the same sense of Batman, Neil Adams' run, Frank Miller's year one will always be that story. The quality of that story will never end just because the continuity changed.
Yeah.
And you can always go back and read that story. And the idea of bringing in new readers and getting more people excited about comics, I think
whatever brings them in, right? Whatever.
Sorry to use that term.
Excuse the phrase, but whatever puts asses in the seats, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like you tried it and like, okay, that version of Batman people didn't seem to like, so we won't go back to it. But in 30 years, somebody will rewrite that version of Batman to make it cool again.
Yeah, and it's fair to admit you're going to have an awful lot of versions when you're looking at 90 years worth of Batman.
Right.
What's strange about the New 52 is Batman is one of the few that people weren't mad about.
Right.
Because
right.
Scott didn't.
Continuation.
Yeah, his attitude was, I'm gonna take Batman and make it. He was like, I think he had gotten to be in his late 30s, so he just restarted the ages, but Batman was still Batman. You know, he didn't change anything about the core of the character. He didn't put Superman in jeans and a t-shirt. You know what I mean? He didn't put Batman into jeans and a t-shirt and a Batman t-shirt. You know,
right?
He kind of kept what it was. He just de-aged him a little bit, and otherwise Batman kind of stayed the same. He was already writing Detective Comics, I think, before that, so he was already kind of engrossed in it.
So let's jump over to Phoebe. So Phoebe, you're in the music business.
Yeah, wait, I want to comment on Batman real quick.
Oh yeah, please do.
Versions of Batman.
Please do, yeah.
So I think if anybody's seen the Harley Quinn cartoon, that is an example where they've completely changed the tone of Gotham.
Right.
And everybody in the show, except for Ivy, is fucking off their rocker, like insane.
Gordon
and
is crazy.
Yeah. And even Batman is kind of a lunatic, and it just works. And it's because Harley and Ivy are the heart of the show. Oh no, the only other one that isn't crazy is King Shark, but he's a computer hacker.
Like, oh, wow. I got to check that out. I just got HBO Max, and it has all the animated series, but I'm telling you, I haven't watched any of them yet.
It's really, really funny.
Do you know who the writer is by any chance?
No, I'm not sure. But
on the TV shows, do the comic writers write those shows, or is it like a TV writer? I'm part of my.
I thought there are some comic writers on that show, I believe, but
I think what I've heard is like what they'll often do is if they're going to lift a story directly from a comic writer who's still kind of around, they'll bring that person on as a consulting producer. They can be in the room, but there's still a TV writer writing the scripts.
Okay, gotcha.
Often, I think that there's probably exceptions like everything else, but.
Gotcha. So Phoebe, you got your musical career going, right? And so you've already got the idea that you want to make comics. Was it quick? Was it over years? Tell me a little bit about the process.
Well, I've always been a writer. Like the book that I released this past year is 17 short stories, and they were written over the courses of 2 decades. Okay. So I've always been writing.
Do you mind if I ask what type of short stories?
Mostly science fiction and horror, and more specifically cyberpunk and horror porn, which is a genre that I've kind of worked a niche for myself out. That's those stories involve graphic sex, graphic substance abuse, and graphic violence.
All right.
So yeah, sex sells, violence sells, go.
It
throw
does.
it all together.
You're not wrong.
So yeah, my first comic book stories were based on characters that I first put into short stories. And it did take a few years. We had a Facebook book private group that maybe took us 3 years to get the first, 2 or 3 stories out. And it was initially going to be like a graphic novel that we were going to have like 6 or 7 stories all in one book. And then just the rate of production was like, all right, we got these 2 ready, let's put an issue out. We got these 3 ready, let's put an issue out. And yeah, I find in indie comics, working in indie comics, you kind of have to work at the rate that certain people can work at. If you find an artist that will work for a rate that you can afford, they might also have a day job and only be able to do 4 pages a month or whatever, which are incredible pages. You still want those pages, but it makes the production of the book a 8-month process, not a 1-month process.
Okay, let me ask you this question. Ready? Would you rather work with an artist who was fast and he could turn the pages in fast, but maybe they're not quite the level of detail that you wanted? Or would you rather have the guy that's slow and maybe he's a month behind, but when you get the page, you go, wow.
Yeah, I think the second one definitely. But one of my artists, JMA, Juan Manuel Almarin, he's from South America, and he crushes those pages. Like if I send him 2 pages worth of script next week, he has those pages and they look beautiful. Yeah. So I do have a few people that work super fast. I have other artists that sometimes I'm like, hey, I know you got these other projects, but I did pay you a couple $100. Could I get those pages sometime soon, please? Right. And it's kind of like the quality of their art is so good that I don't want the relationship to get soured, but also it like tests my patience at times.
Yeah. And I, again, this is one man's opinion. I've worked with a number of artists, but first off, I understand because I'm this way too. Some people like to really take their time. Look, I want to generate the best potential work for you that I can, right? Mm-hmm. I respect that. Yeah. That said, I worked with one fella, it's a 9-page short story, and it took it was 9.5 months to get the pages back. When I got the pages, they're amazing. But I'm not working with that fella again. I had put out something like 2 other books in the space that he did his 9 pages. It's too long. And maybe
can't you just work on it in the pocket? Like I don't know. I've worked with some artists who took a long time to hand in the work, but it was worth it in the end. And
Yeah.
I have this attitude of I want to make the best comics possible regardless. Like if that story takes 2 years to make, then that's going to kind of have to be on the back burner and maybe, 1 page a month or something. But like if the artwork is beautiful, I mean, that isn't that the point of comics is.
To me, it is. To me, it is. And KJ, I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth for a second.
Yeah, right. Well, and you got to work with the economics and the schedules. And
right, because I'm a small publisher. I don't, in my perfect world, KJ, I'm trying to release 4 titles a year. And I'm sure you know how hard that is to get all the pieces to run on time to do that. So as you know, there's always a project. For me, there's always 2 in the works, right? So I guess I would say it like this. It's definitely worth the wait for the most beautiful page possible. But in the age of social media and the instant gratification that we live in, as creators, we almost have to keep churning something out lest we fall back into obscurity relatively quickly. Do you think I'm correct or am I wrong?
No, I would agree with you completely. I feel, I did my last Kickstarter last year. And I haven't really done much except for work in secret on this series, and I just feel like I'm kind of starting from the beginning again. Yeah, like people kind of forgot, like, oh, I'm still doing this thing. But yeah. And I think it's a balance. I think, and your budgets are going to depend on it too. I mean, if you have to crank out some books and to bring in some revenue too.
Right.
The thing with something taking so long is you're just investing money and it's kind of sitting there and you can't get any revenue back because the story's not done. And I get that too. But in a perfect world, you wait for the genius artist.
Yeah. And, I guess I would say, well, and maybe, one of the things we talk about on the show fairly often is that as creators, there's an element of mental health that always enters into the completion of the work. And it's a very serious subject, and we sometimes shy away from it. But the truth is, it affects all of us. Writers, artists, there's always somebody that's going to be kind of, particularly in creative personality types, they tend to go through these things. So you got to be sort of patient, right, to make it all work.
Yeah, and it's I think it's managing personalities too, because some people are slow because they need somebody to tell them to hurry up. I can't do that. I just have too many things on my plate.
Okay, let me ask you this: when one of your guys is late, what do you say to them?
It's okay.
It's okay.
I'm gonna probably be late on our next script. I mean, I think at this level, the biggest thing I've been trying to do is just get the content. I plan to go into regular comic shops and do regular distribution at some point, but I feel like doing everything on my own, I'm going to need a lot of releases built up. So, we're working on what essentially is issue 6 of The Resistance, plus 3 issues of Hyperaction and 5 of Sophia Saturn. Eventually when we go through distribution, what we're working on now is going to be a year off before it gets released in regular comic shops. So I just try to be accommodating at this point. There might be a point where you can't, but and then consistency is the other thing. I think we're all writing for the trades at this point, even though I'm committed to single issues. I know that the final product is going to be in a trade, and the idea of having more than one artist interrupt that story and now give you basically a different perspective. I've just never been keen on that. And so even with my colorists, I've been committed to them as much as they have to the project, and to work with them to get through it.
Okay. So Jerry, how about you? First thing, I want to know a little bit about your team. This is Cicada Samurai. How many people are involved in this project?
So actively, it's 2. Actively, it's me, and the artist is Mary Landro. She's doing pencils, inks, colors, and eventually letters.
Okay.
She's doing the whole thing.
And do you mind if I ask how did you find her?
Instagram.
Oh, and was it a matter of you saw her art and loved it and said, "This is my person"?
I was already following her, and so I had another artist do the original character designs. It was someone else that I reached out to on Instagram. It's Takashi Okazaki,
Nice.
Who did Afro Samurai. He just was into it. Like, I got really lucky. So I didn't know cicadas are a very big thing in Japan too. And so he immediately knew what it was and was just kind of into it. And within a couple of days was sending me drawings, and we were kind of pitching samurai stories back and forth. It was like, he had no reason to even reply to me, really, but he did, and it was amazing. But he's incredibly busy. He does animation. He was doing a Marvel book. He's doing the Star Wars Visions. It's like a sort of a Jedi samurai story that he was doing for Marvel, and a bunch of anime projects and all this stuff. So he was crazy busy. He couldn't do the art for the book, so I needed to move on. And I spent a long time, like following artists online, and I just reached out to Mary, and she was into it.
Cool. And can I ask you, what is in this case, can you tell us a little bit about the choice and especially what it really means that it's an issue 0, number 0?
So it's basically, it's because it's a short. I have a 6-issue first arc, outlined. I started scripting that already, but I didn't want to jump in with a full issue first. I kind of wanted to dip my toe. It's my first time. I wanted to dip my toe in the water and see if anybody cared about a martial arts bug. Before I put a rather large investment into, making the first couple of issues.
So what's the size of this project?
It's a 10-page story, but I'm printing it as a 24-page book. So I hit my funding goal pretty quickly, and I was trying to come up with stretch goals. And in doing that, I just kind of decided I'm just going to put all the stretch goals into the book now.
What is that, like pages and character sheets and stuff?
Yeah. So I went from an 8-page to a 10-page story, and then script, the ink pages. I'm running a competition online that's actually going to end in about 3 hours for up and coming artists. Anyone who wanted to sketch the character, tag me. I was going to pick my 4 or 5 favorite ones. I publish them in the book, pay the artist.
Cool. Yeah, that is cool. Man. Yeah.
So that was the idea. So all that's going to make it a 24-page book when I print it. But
sure.
But that's the whole thing.
Well, and you're funded, so congratulations. Let's do a quick call to action for the viewers. We're talking about Cicada Samurai. That's number 0. A lone cicada samurai warrior protects young cicadas from a nightmarish foe. I think this book sounds terrific. Please come over to Kickstarter right now and check that out. You won't be disappointed, right, Jerry?
I hope not. I really hope not.
If you like the book, please direct all hate mail to Jerry.
Please do.
Okay, so I'm actually kind of excited to hear a little bit more about this one too. So we were talking to Phoebe earlier about Vikings Saga of the North, and I didn't realize. So this is an educational book.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
I love it. I love it already. I love it. Phoebe, tell us what type of customer is going to love Vikings Saga of the North.
I think people who love comic books, people who love history, people who love Vikings.
I love all 3 of those things.
There you go. This was written for you then.
I would be very interested in this. I think that the historical genre is ripe for comic projects.
Yeah, thank you. And I kind of leave it off at the end how like the next big movement of war that would define the next couple hundred years is then the Crusades happen after this. That's sort of the next era that comes up. So maybe Jose and I will have to revisit historical books at some time and come back and write a book about the Crusades.
Yeah, really. That'd be a great sequel. And what is the size of this project? How many pages and so forth?
It's 24 pages. 22 of it is the actual art and story. And then the last 2 pages, I think, are other 1, 2, 3 Go plugs and advertisements.
Cool. Yeah, same thing, viewers. Call to action. If this sounds like your bag, Vikings Saga of the North. That's live on Kickstarter right now. I love his.
I had a question for Jerry, if I could.
Yeah, come on, go.
Jerry, are you familiar with Cicada?
No. Is it a comic?
Okay, Cicada is an ongoing joke that Seth Meyers does in his corrections segment. It's a YouTube only sort of special he does. And he just like, he mentioned it once as like a one-off joke. And then he started talking about how it's starring Nathan Lane and this and that. And it's about a cicada coming to grips with the fact that he only lives 4 days or something. And it's an ongoing joke for several years now, and you should totally look into it if you like cicadas. Obviously, you're inspired.
When this is over, I'm gonna. That's my internet hole for Friday night.
I promise you'll laugh. It's very funny.
Cool.
Thank you.
And I'm a big fan of this one too. Let's take a quick second. We're going to talk about the Resistance. Met KJ a couple of years ago, as I mentioned at the con, and one of the things that struck me about this book, and I'm going to ask this question, I'm not just going to pontificate here. It has a very cool sense of world building, right? It's sort of like I always mess this part up, but it's sort of like a pseudo-military sci-fi conspiracy. There's many elements, but what I think is cool, it has sort of like a character setup that's not too different from it's like a G.I. Joe kind of thing. And by the way, I mean that in the most complimentary way. That's something that I really like. Kyle, can you tell us a little bit, who is going to love the Resistance? What type of customer will love this?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely fans of G.I. Joe or X-Men. I sometimes steal both of their old taglines. And the Resistance are an uncompromising strike force,
Awesome.
fighting for a world that fears and hates them.
Cool.
They're led by Interval, who's this guilt-driven soldier whose actions caused her fellow aliens to be on Earth. And now she's fighting corruption and oppression wherever she can find it 100 years in the future.
Gotcha. For viewers, please go check this one out. That's The Resistance on Kickstarter now. We'll get that one funded. I can personally vouch for the quality of this book. I've got a couple of them. I think I have 2 or 3 of The Resistance, and I have Sophia Saturn too. Yeah. But the thing I wanted to tell KJ, I kind of don't want him to know this, but I guess it can't hurt. When I take interior page layouts and what we call interstitials, the things that come with the book that are not necessarily part of the story, like the interior cover things and sometimes the back cover. Never quite sure what to do there or what it should look like. And when I talk to Luis, who's our graphic designer, what I use for an example, like something like this, I use the Resistance, something like this.
Oh, nice.
And I don't necessarily mean copy or colors or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, I just meant, the concise layout of it, and it's got a little, what I call punch. I realize that's
thanks. I am available for hire as a letterer and doing full production. There's
listen, I'd be thrilled to do something graphic design wise. That's what I'm always short on over here. If you guys don't know too much about me, that's fine, but it would be fair to say that I have no idea what I'm doing. So I always hire other people to do these things. And the reason why they look pretty good is I try to find the smart people. And then, of course, if I'm not sure what to do, I get online Friday nights and I tell them to come over and I ask them all these questions. And that's how I learn it.
I actually took a class through a school called Comics Experience. By Andy Schmidt.
I know.
And I took the lettering class through them, which was taught by Dave Sharp, who used to be in the Marvel bullpen, and he does most of DC books.
I know who Dave Sharp is, sure.
And that class taught me so much about how the donuts are made in comics. And took my lettering. Before that, I taught myself through YouTube, and it just took it to a professional level. I mean, I'm not there yet. I mean, I got a ways to go, but still, I mean,
I think it's a well-lettered book. I guess let's ask a little bit more about our teams, because I think I'm kind of perceiving that we are. First of all, are we all in America? Where are we from?
I'm in Oceanside, California.
Okay. Because a lot of us now work with international teams. And I'm going to start with Jerry. First off, Jerry, did I perceive correctly? You are also an international team.
I'm in New York. Mary, Takashi's in Japan, doesn't speak English. And then Mary's in Canada, which is technically
it's international. Yeah. And so do you speak a little Japanese then?
No. We've been communicating. It must be all through Google Translate.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Sure.
There you go.
Yeah, not bad.
I'll bring you on to translate.
Cool. And so Phoebe, how about you? You got an international team, yes?
Yeah. I am not independently wealthy. I work in food
Come on.
service.
I know comic book writers make money. You can't fool me.
I work in food service. So when I'm looking at artists that I appreciate the art of, I'm also looking at what their page rate is, because I can't afford to pay Marvel DC page rates.
Sure, of course.
So yeah, that and the way that works out fairly ethically is if you work with people in South America or Southeast Asia, your money goes a lot further out there. You're able to pay them a decent wage for their time and effort. So that's how a lot of my team winds up being in other countries.
Can I ask, what is their countries they're from?
Okay, so like I have two different colorists that are my main colorists right now. That one is in the Philippines, and the other is in Argentina.
Oh.
I letter myself. KJ, I bet your letters are better than mine. I feel what you're saying when you say like I'm not there yet as a pro, but it's like you want to be. You keep every person you find that you can learn from. You sit down and listen and pick up a thing or two. Yeah. But the reason I started lettering was just to afford to be able to do this.
Right.
But yeah, so who else do I work with now? Oh, so for example, Jose, who is the artist on this Kickstarter, he's from Guatemala. His niece is the colorist. I think she's in Guatemala as well.
Gotcha. And how did you find them? How did you find them?
Well, Facebook is filled with these forums and these that are groups that are like comic book artist seeking writer, or writer seeking letter, or this or that, comic books with this theme, comic books with that theme. And so yeah, I found Jose soliciting, hey, I need a publisher for my book, and he didn't really have a book yet. He just had all these beautiful drawings. I was like, oh, this is really good. Let's make a book. You don't have a book yet, but I'm gonna work with you. We're gonna make a book. And so it's like a year and a half later, and we're done, and we want to see who's interested.
Awesome. Well, it's something I firmly believe in also, not just because of it's a great idea to save money. I think we can all get behind that. But I think that in my case, some of the product came out a little better because of some added perspective of some international folks. I want to ask KJ this question too, because some of your guys are Americans, I know, but I think you're semi-international, right?
My colorist. Yeah, the main artist on the Resistance series, Jason Johnson, he's out of Vegas, and actually he used to live here in San Diego at one point. And then the other artist, that Ben Herrera, who worked on Sophia Saturn and Hyperaction with me.
Yeah, that's a good one too, KJ.
He's actually international now. When I first met him, he lived half a mile from my house.
Oh wow!
And he's I think he's in Macedonia now, maybe, or something. He went traveling and never came back. But yeah, the colorists that I've been working with, our latest colorist, Manuel Ordaz Torres. He's in Mexico, just south of the border. Yeah, he's the new colorist on the series. And I haven't really searched out international colorists. It's just been, you got to find somebody, and it doesn't matter where they're from.
Correct. And I would add one small part, and Phoebe kind of touched on this, which is when you find your person, I run this small studio over here. The show's not about me, but we have this thing we do. We're always looking for new people. And when we see them, we go, that's our guy or girl. We have one. I'm trying to work out to get a little bit more diverse staff. We're doing well on nations, but I want to work with more women,
it's hard.
Yeah.
It's the talent goes quickly. It gets snatched up quickly because it's rare in the industry. It's always been a boys' club.
It kind of is.
Decades,
and
shouldn't have been. But
the one colorist that I got her through one of the Facebook groups that Phoebe mentioned. Her name's Martina Rossi. You guys know Martina Rossi? Wow, her colors highly recommended. She just murdered the project that we put her on. It was like, okay, that's our girl here on the team. One of the things I like to do, guys, and I want to remind you that you are not under any obligation to answer any of my questions. But sometimes, this is all about how we learn and grow and how we help other people learn to make comics. So sometimes I ask about the costs of things. If you're not comfortable answering that question, please don't. But it's something that if you want to, you can. Jerry, are you comfortable talking about page rates and cover rates? If not, it's okay.
Yeah, I'm going to say no because I've just told you that like she's doing the entire stuff, and I don't want to talk about what she's making. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I mean, I can talk about ranges of what I've paid for covers and other.
That would be terrific. That would be terrific.
Yeah.
So what I was going to ask you is, when you again give a range, you don't have to name anybody, but in your opinion, how do I want to ask this? An indie creator, let's say it's a person just getting started, and they're inquiring about page rates, right? What do you feel is an acceptable page rate, and what is an acceptable cover rate for a newcomer?
Wow. I mean, it's such a hard question, right? Because it depends on the book. It depends on, are they doing pencils, inks, and colors?
Highly detailed sci-fi book about martial arts and a bug fighting other samurais. A book like that.
A book like that. Okay. All right. I mean, for the covers that I have on my, I have 4 covers in my book. The range of what I paid for each cover goes from $0 to $400.
Okay, that's about right. That's about right.
Yeah, and so that's what I would say for covers. For interiors, you know, I worked with briefly with an international artist. I think he's South American, like you were saying, Phoebe, and he was incredibly talented. His name is Pablo Verdugo. He did a book on Kickstarter. I think it was on Kickstarter and Indiegogo at different times. It was called Mr. Beaver. He's actually doing one of the Ninja Turtles offshoot books now. One of their side story books. He's great, and he was very in it. He was very reasonably priced compared to people you talk to who are about as talented in the States. But I work with another guy who's very talented and just hasn't really like taken off yet. And he's making like $80 a page doing pencils and inks, and he's been at it for a few years now. Has a decent online following, but for some reason just hasn't really like moved up the page rate depth chart yet.
Cool. Let's move over to Phoebe. Do you have a little more there, Jerry?
No, I mean, there's another book that I think is really good. There's a guy named Barry McLean who's incredibly talented, and he does Billy the Kid. But he's a co-owner of the book, and so he gets nothing for the work. When the book is profitable, he'll make his money. But so it's really all over the map. But what I would say is all the advice I got about when you're getting in as a writer looking for an artist is you can make arrangements. If you can, it doesn't need to be, here's my page rate, I'll pay you all that up front, and then that's it. You'll go away. I'll own the book, and whatever I want to do with it is up to me. You can, a lot of times, some of them will, they'll work with you on it. They'll say, if you're going to do a Kickstarter, pay me some of it now, pay me some of it when you fund. If you don't fund, I'll own part of the book, and we'll move forward that way. You share the IP, you share sales. There's lots of different ways you can kind of make. And if you find
the right person, they'll work with you, right?
Yeah, hopefully. Some people aren't interested in that. Some people they'll tell you, on this project, I'm actually just looking for a paycheck because I'm buying a house and I need the money.
Well, and look, not for nothing. Again, I search for the right way to say things because I don't want to say anything disparaging about these fine people that we work with in this terrific industry. But one of the things is I can understand why somebody would want rights to the project. I'd want that too. But the reality is those rights may not be worth very much. You might want to take that check up front. That's what I tell my guys.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely true. If you suspect that the book is going somewhere, you might be okay with a reduced rate to just get on board.
So speaking of page rates, so Phoebe, when you do your books, how do you pay your artists? Do you do 24 pages and you pay all at once? You pay 50% up front, 50% at completion? What do you recommend for a beginning creator?
50% up front and 50 upon completion, I think, is a really good policy. I think that another thing, though, as far as like that's sort of getting into whether like you trust someone's gonna deliver, and I kind of judge that based on how many mutuals we have. Like, oh, this guy's friends with those people who are pretty fucking serious about their comic books. Then he hasn't screwed anybody over in any meaningful way. That's a measuring stick litmus test I use.
That's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one.
Thanks. Yeah. But okay, so I have a cover type image that I'm paying for currently that I'm paying about $400 for. Maybe
that's
it's
color, I assume.
Yeah, full color and an incredible artist. Like I know I'm getting my money's worth there.
Yeah.
I think there are also other artists that do the equivalent of a cover image, like a splash sort of image that I will use as a cover. I go in and do my own graphic design as well. I don't do all my logo designs. I'll pay someone to do the logo, but then I'll do the outlay myself. I work in Linux. I work in GIMP. I don't use Adobe or anything. But also like so some of the people I work with are like students and students in third world economies. Yeah. So like paying
I've done that a couple times.
So paying them like less than what would be expected in America is actually going a long way in their life. So without giving any specifics, I think it's more about the ethical like I couldn't offer that rate to someone in America. Correct. And that's why I'm not necessarily seeking to work with as many Americans.
Yeah. And maybe I want to clarify something. Thank you for that answer, Phoebe. And in case this is being perceived as that I'm angling for some way to pay artists less, it's not that at all. If it was up to me, I'd pay artists $1,000 a page. To me, that's how much it's worth. What I'm suggesting is maybe if we found a way to make things slightly more affordable, there'd be more work to go around. You know what I mean?
Well, okay. This is the other thing, and you were talking about how some people might take the investment or the points, let's say, on the property for the future or whatever,
Right.
because they believe in it or they think it's going to make money in the future. But the way things are, at least in indie comics, and I think to a degree this translates also into the majors, is that the artist is the talent. The artist is like the actor, if you will, like to make
yeah. I buy that. It's a visual medium.
Yeah, and so like the writer doesn't get paid as much as Tom Cruise or The Rock does, and the artist is the rock star in comic books. Yeah. So they get paid before I get paid, and I only get paid if my Kickstarter funds, or after I paid them to make the book, then I get paid maybe if I promote it well. So,
gotcha.
I was thinking about this recently actually, because it is a strange thing in comics where, I agree. The artist is like the artist, you can't judge a book by its cover, but you can decide if you're going to pick it up and look inside by the cover, right? So your cover artist is very important in a comic book, more so than maybe in any other kind of publishing. Mm-hmm. Your interior artist is essential. All that art and all that beauty is hung on the framework that you've built as a writer. But when you think about like the titans of comic creators, it's often the writers who get more of that credit. And even historically, everyone knows Stan Lee.
Quick question, Jerry. And this isn't, don't hear Tim's disagreeing with me, but you brought up a great point, and I want to talk about this. We all know the writers are the titans of the industry, right? But look at this room, what you got in here, 4 writers.
Right.
If do you think, Jerry, that if I had 4 artists in this room, would they agree with what you said?
I think that I don't know because I think
I bet you they wouldn't.
I don't know if I agree 100%. I think it's a mix.
Chime in, KJ. I want to hear your 2 cents.
Kirby, Perez, Adams. I mean, those
Wrightson.
Those 3 have touched so many of the big characters that are right. that we all know today. But yeah, I mean, and I think that, but when you talk about writers, Stan Lee obviously was the king of self-promotion.
Right.
I mean, he made himself the titan that he was. And
it's kind of like, though, like we're all sort of in the industry, right? And so I think we make a point of kind of knowing the artists too, because we all know those stories about how Stan became more famous, kind of sometimes at the expense of the people he co-created those characters with, and the animosity and whether it was real or not and all that stuff. So
I want to jump in and say something controversial here. I'm not really sure that's true either. Here's why. Yeah. If you took a bunch of comic creators, as you put 100 comic creators in a room, and you said, raise your hand if you know who Jack Kirby is, how many hands would go up?
I mean, all of them.
100.
So I'm not sure Stan held him back. If it was pay, maybe.
Stan Lee is a household name. Most people don't know Jack Kirby outside of comics. And a lot of people in comics have no idea who Steve Ditko is. No clue. Oh, yeah. I can't believe how many times I'm at conventions and another creator. And it's not, it's not like
that might be an age thing. That might be
you
an
need
age
to know
thing,
all these names. Like, you don't need to know. I'm trying to think of some old actor.
Errol Flynn.
Thank you. You don't need to know him to be an actor. You don't need to know what he did to pave the way. But I think it's a mix. But then when it comes to writers too, they're more prolific. Like, Scott Snyder and Neil Gaiman and Grant Morrison. They're known for so many different projects because they're able to actually put out those projects, where an artist is going to take so much longer to do each individual book.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's part of what I mean is that there's like, Scott and Greg Capullo had a great partnership on Batman. And again, we're in the industry, so we know both names, but I think that Scott's is more, the writer's name goes first on the cover of the book. Like it just is kind of built that way. And it's weird because it's such a visual medium. But then when you flip it, like think about people who are up and coming. Like we're all talking about our Kickstarters, right? We're not going to get paid unless our Kickstarter is funded and goes probably above and beyond whatever goal we set for ourselves, right? And even there, we're probably going to spend that money on promoting ourselves, trying to fund the next thing. Like we're not really paying ourselves. Whereas we can't go to a convention as a writer and get a commission to write a story. Like that doesn't happen. Whereas an artist can tour on a book, sell the book. They might not be getting a share of the book sales, but they're gonna make money doing commissions at conventions if they're good at self-promotion. We can't really do that as writers. So it's kind of like a weird thing where I feel like overall, maybe it's more of an outside the business thing, but the writers get more credit for these stories and these books, but the artists actually have more opportunity to get paid making them. And so you need to make a successful book as a writer, as the publisher, to really, draw a paycheck at all from this life. Whereas like you can be an artist on 1 or 2 books and do a couple of shows a year and make a few $1,000 at Comic-Con, just by selling.
Or stay at home and do commissions. There's a lot of artists out there who have credits. That's all they do. They make a living off commissions. But it's interesting, like your entry into the industry and into comics. So I came through the 90s, and that's when Image Comics blew up.
Right.
And that was 6 artists that left Marvel because they were the top selling artists at the time. And the writers weren't as respected at that time outside of, the big ones.
I didn't think those books were well written. The initial Image book sucked.
I'm with you, Phoebe. By the way, I respect what they did. That's a tremendous effort. Congratulations, everyone. But I can't say I was a fan of any of those books.
Yeah.
Oh,
when they talked us all into buying Spawn?
Just too much. I mean,
I bought 100 copies of Wildcats #1 to get the golden cover.
Yeah. But no, I mean, but also Savage Dragon. I think it gets overlooked a lot. But that's a book where it's a creator's vision. It wasn't necessarily the most commercial successful, but he was the one who, and still to this day, is writing and drawing that book.
KJ, you got a great point there, and I have a question about this. And first off, as always, feel free to disagree with me if anybody wants to. But I've got a lot of respect for everybody in this room and your projects, and I've looked through them. And let me tell you, the reason why I have a lot of respect for them, you didn't necessarily take the easy money commercial route. Like they're all kind of eclectic, and I would call them kind of, I guess what I would say is if we were all in it for the money, you probably would have made a very different book than the one you made. So
I certainly would have made a very different cover.
Right. I'm trying to say it gently, but KJ, let's start with you. When you were making your book, you knew that certain kind of covers and materials sold more.
Oh,
but you stayed true to your vision. Why did you do that?
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is we don't over sexualize our characters. Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong. Look, I like sex as much as anybody else.
I do.
Well, good. Okay.
That's your genre, Phoebe. That's your bread and butter.
And again, I'm somebody who grew up in the 90s where, sexuality was a big part of pop culture in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And it, almost like the late 60s, but my characters and the vision that I've always had for my project was so influenced by 80s cartoons like G.I. Joe and Transformers, but also 80s and 90s comics when you had the comics Koepp. I wanted to produce a book that a 10-year-old can pick up and read, and their 40-year-old father or mother could enjoy it just as much. And it just, I don't know that, there might be some other project where I'm super happy to over-sexualize my characters. But these characters, for some reason, they're very militaristic. So I kind of find it doesn't really speak to the core of the characters. And,
there you go, man. It doesn't speak to the core of the characters.
Yeah. And there's not a lack of sexiness. I feel our characters are sexy and attractive. It's just
look, I'm the same way. My books are all
exploited. I guess.
I do the attractive,
and I don't want to use that as a negative term because because you exploit yourself. We're all here to be our own brand and to exploit ourselves to try and sell our comics.
So let's say, Jerry, what about you? If you had somebody come to you and they say, "Hey, man, this Cicada Samurai, I love this book, but look, I got this tip for you. And they recommended, let me think of something that you might say no to. And it's something that's not in the book and it's just too adult for the brand. But they say, hey, but this will triple the sales. Would you do it? Or would you stay true to the brand?
I mean, this early, certainly not. I think I haven't given up on the idea that I can get people to read the book that I want to write. You know, I think that if you come into writing Superman, you have a fixed audience and you have to write the book that they want. You have to surprise them. You have to find ways to kind of, you know, make them interested and keep them engaged, but you have to write the book that they want. You have to write their Superman, right? This is my guy. I'm gonna write him the way I want to write him, and if I can find people who like that, great. And if I can't find enough people who like it, I'll write a different guy. You know, I'll write a different character. But I don't, you know, it's actually been pointed out to me a couple times. The name of my imprint is Thorny Comics, and I'm like this close. I'm one letter away. So if I ever need to pivot,
what's the what is the significance of Thorny Comics?
Oh, my daughter's middle name is Rose, and so I wanted to use the rose as my logo, and now she's, you know, she kind of is on the cover of every book.
Oh, that's terrific. Is it okay if I ask how old she is?
She's 10.
Oh, great age. I got a 26 and a 15.
Mine are 12, 10, and 7.
Enjoy this time, brother. That's the best time.
I am.
It goes by fast, and then you're going to be looking at your empty kitchen. So, Phoebe, let's jump back to you. Now, you said you've embraced it, right? Nudity, gore, bring it on.
Well, it depends on the particular comic book character or story.
Oh, so you're still saying to, you know, embrace the concept of staying true to the brand.
Yeah, that there. Oh, some of my stuff is very sexualized. Actually, so one of my artists that I work with, his name is Shwenchen Bunog, and he is from Thailand. And his full-time job is he's a hentai artist. And so you can look at a couple of my comic book covers and you'll be like, whoa, those are some bodacious ladies with big old TNA. And I'm like, yes, but you don't understand. That's a very tame image for Schwenchen, actually. That in a couple of instances I've had to use word bubbles or captions to cover up the camel toe that he wants to put in like every single bikini shot. And I'm like, I'm trying to write this one as a PG-13 book. Let's not do that every 2 panels. And yeah, God bless you, Schwenchen, you're amazing. But like, I don't want to over-sexualize every book. But I do like sexy women to be sexy. And the way in our book, Gunmetal Black Ops, it's the way the creator, Frederick B. Roseman, wrote them, is like they're 2 very attractive lesbian couple and they're assassins. And like, they're awesome, and I love writing for those characters. So like for them to be making out on the cover with their boobs smashed together is like the way they were intended to be.
Yeah, and I guess I would say I have less objection to if it is something that kind of fits the book. And I guess I shouldn't even say really objection, but it's something that every time they recommend it to me, because if the show's not about me again, but I'm write female characters. All my characters are female except one, but I don't do any of that stuff just because I was never comfortable, and also that's not really what the story's about. So, you know, but that said, you know, do I like that kind of material? I kind of do, right? And do I like even kind of the gory material? Oh, I kind of do, right? And so, you know, I come by it honestly, I guess, but I haven't crossed over to where I haven't done any on my own books. And
one of the other things that I've always like heard as advice that I've taken on board and really appreciate as a creator is write what you want to read. Like if no one else in the world happens to ever get a chance to look at your story or see your book or whatever, at least make it something that you're happy to go back and read over and over again. Like, hey, I made this and I love this. Like, don't write what you think people want. Write what you want.
I also would totally read
my own thing.
What's that, Jim?
I'm a super fan of my own characters. It's crazy. It's weird, but you have to be. You have to love your characters to want to continue to write them too, I think.
Yeah.
So
and I would write a story that fits into this category. This just isn't that story. I wouldn't take the story of like a sort of parental figure protecting a million teenagers. Like, this is a story that's like about my anxiety as a parent. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to put boobs on the cover. It just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
You know,
right.
but I would absolutely write a story that I would go, you know, what would go well on the cover of this story is that, you know, or whatever it is. I mean, this story is super violent. Like I'm 4 pages in and a kid gets torn in half. You know,
what's your rating on this title, Jerry? M?
I mean, there's
is it that adult
M.
or medium, like an R?
Probably like sub R. There's a little cursing and there's a lot of violence.
What do you mind if I ask what the curse word is?
There's at least one F-bomb.
Okay, it's R.
That can still be PG-13. You
if
get
it's one,
F-bomb,
you get one. Yeah.
I got one.
But I don't. As much as effective as the F-bomb can be in a comic book script, and this will probably shock you, but I use that word a lot. But one thing that I learned it's the number one thing that an editor will kick back on you. So I don't use the F-bomb. I mean, and I don't always submit to publishers, but as KJ knows, I sometimes take a finished one and see if I get any action. And man, the hardest swear word that we go to in our series, which is full of violence and gunplay and all kind of nastiness, one guy says the word bitch once. Other than that, there's no language.
Yeah. So mine are just I have a bunch of teenagers, and then the oldest, the only adult character is the Cicada Samurai because everyone else dies when they're 17 over and over again for 6 generations. So he's essentially like a parent trying to protect, you know, millions of teenage kids who are just, they know they actually only have weeks to live, you know, by the time they go above ground. So there is no tomorrow. So they're just being wild and crazy. And he's got to keep them alive long enough for the species to continue. So he has a lot of like, his narration is very much the way I talk about my own kids driving me crazy. You know?
Perfect.
And so,
in-house source material.
Yeah, and so that's the F-bomb. Like there's an F-bomb, but it's basically like I can use I can say that, right? I can say it on here.
I think you can.
So I can, but I don't know if I'm allowed. If I'm
yeah.
So I wanted to ask. But you know, it's kind of like a dad complaining. Like, you know, even when you figure out how to warn your kids about the dangers in the world, they don't fucking listen. Like, that's the context of the F-bomb. It's not like some big crazy thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know. Is that an R rating? I guess I'm technically sure.
Well, like I'm pretty sure if you're right, you can have one.
You get one.
You get one at PG-13, and then 2's the R. Yeah.
Right.
So tell you what, let's change this up just a hair, ready? Because I'm interested to see what this answer will be. So we've all jumped in the water. We're creators, we're writers, we're publishers, various niches. KJ, if you were not making comics, what would you do?
I'd probably go back to live audio. I was doing live sound for a number of years before I got back into comics. I hope that day never comes, though. I mean, honestly, like, my day job is I sell comics and toys. So if publishing comics didn't work out, I'd actually just
you'd still be in comics, kind of.
I wouldn't be going anywhere.
Yeah, and now for Jerry, same thing, right?
Hanging around.
So same thing for Jerry, right? Like if you weren't making comics, you're still in the entertainment business.
I mean, I also feel like most people who are in indie comics have a day job. Unless you've managed to already build your publisher up to the point where you're in stores and you have multiple titles coming out that you're not writing them all. I feel like most of us have a day job. So my day job is I'm making television shows. I'd like to make different TV shows than the ones I make for the most part, but you know,
I work with
it's a fun job.
I work with a reality show guy, and I love the guy. They hired me to write his biography or autobiography, excuse me. And I thought I was just like a ghostwriter, like a helper. I think KJ knows this story. And didn't they give me a writing credit on the book? And there's like a signing tour and the whole nonsense. So man, I was like, okay, I'm in, man. Lump me in with the reality TV people. Let's go. You know,
that's awesome. Can I ask who it is, or is it like?
No, I don't mind. It's David Starr. He is he's a stage designer primarily and magician in Las Vegas, but he works with all these big name acts, Kevin Hart and Alabama and Celine Dion. And like, he's one of these, and he's also, so I'll quick tell you the story. He designs this rock star clothing. It's like a jacket with a guitar on it. It's really cool. And he was wearing it once on vacation, and a guy came up to him and was like, hey, do you sell those? And he's like, well, I can make them. And he got hired to create a fashion line. And then they invited him to Prague, and then he goes to the Cannes Film Festival. Like each one gets bigger and bigger. So now he's this fashion designer.
Oh wow!
I know, it's crazy. And now he wants to make a comic book to promote his life. And somehow I got involved with that. I was standing in the right place at the right time. And at Baltimore, we did a signing, and it was really cool to do. Fun project.
It under Earth Dog Studios?
I just put it up today.
Okay.
Hold on, tell you what, I'm sitting here in my office. I'll show you one. You guys want to see this?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. It's your show, man.
Yeah, right.
Well, hold
Promote.
on. I appreciate you say that, but that's the deal. The show's about you. But since you asked,
I
he's
could
a
be
rock star
actually
designer.
Sounds pretty ill.
Yeah.
Nice.
And there's his products that he
Yeah.
sells.
So you had that
So
in Baltimore this year, right?
Yeah, we sold it at Baltimore. And it's actually a very high quality book. I'll give you an idea. Like, you got some cool splash pages of Vegas and meeting
Wow.
celebrities and playing roulette and the whole bit. And it's
So
all
did
true.
Yes.
You didn't produce the book, but are you considered the publisher?
I am. I know life is full of twists and turns, KJ. Like I say, and I'd be happy to talk about that anytime, but I kind of want to keep the spotlight on you guys. So let's jump over to Phoebe.
Okay, well, first I wanted to shout out my friend that's in reality TV.
Yeah, come on, go.
My friend Jeffrey Marks won a Grammy last year. Is that what it's called? No, the Grammys are
Emmy.
music.
Emmy.
Yeah. He won an Emmy for a Netflix series. He's been doing casting in reality TV for a decade and a half. I don't know, a long time. He got his break by being a contestant on not Big Brother, but some house that they kick you out of. I don't know.
That's Big Brother.
Get me out of
That's all
here.
right.
It might have been Big Brother. But yeah, Jeffrey is someone who's been my friend since Occupy Wall Street. We met in Zuccotti Park in New York City, and I've been friends with him through social media for the last 12 years. And yeah, he won last year, and I'm so happy for him and happy to be able to shout him out as my personal connection to reality.
Nice. Yeah. So Phoebe, what would you do if you were not making comics? If you were not creating in that field?
So I spend more time on writing my books.
So these are novels or short stories?
Yeah, I have. Okay, so one of the books that I am working on is about a let's call it a company that offers a service to people, billionaires, trillionaires in the deep future, where they send them back into different alternate timelines, but to take over the body of someone, and like they'll send somebody back into the 1980s with the lyrical knowledge of Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls or something, like 15 years ahead of their time, so that in the 80s they're able to easily become like the hugest thing in hip hop ever, or like to take over jam music, or be like this actor with like all this like knowledge that would not have been available at that time. And then it's about a couple of characters who then go against that company. But yeah, the first half of the book sort of just introduces all the fucked up shit that they do, and then the second half of the book is called Casual Val, and that's the main character who sort of winds up the person that goes against them. And yeah, I have like at least 8, maybe 7 to 8 chapters written and the whole book outlined. But because I'm usually busy either at my day job or doing comic books, like it's more of a seldom that I work on it. But every now and then some little new detail of it hits my head. I'm like, oh, this should happen too. So I go back to the document and add that to it. But yeah, so I've been working on other creative stuff. I also do stand-up comedy sometimes.
Oh, wow.
I might do that more.
That's
yeah, I have
cool.
a couple of friends who also are kind of either comedians, stand-ups, or just very funny people that I make sketches with. I'd probably put more energy into that.
Would you ever have any desire to write like a comedy script and, you know, maybe try?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. My friends and I wrote an entire season of what would have been a 15-minute Adult Swim comedy that we were going to pitch. Yeah.
Well, we could pitch it to Jerry. He could put it on the air.
I have final draft too. I actually wrote 3 full X-Men scripts and one of my own scripts that was completely self-created, OC or whatever.
Cool. That's awesome.
Well, yeah, I think that music connection, I think that's the creative outlet. For a while, when I had a garage band, I still knew friends who were making comics, and they're like, "Oh, don't you still have stories?" And I'm like, "Well, right now this is fulfilling me creatively, and that at some point when I get older, I'm not going to have a garage band when I'm 48 as I am now." And so, you know, you do that in your 20s. And I think it's, as people get older, a lot of us find that comics are just a great creative outlet and expression.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, right? I guess I want to ask this question too. Like, because we're getting a little bit close to our time. We're going to be right around 10:30. I'm going to give some time for shouting out the projects again, but many things can happen in creating a comic project, which could turn you around or to sour you on the experience. And I'm kind of a positive guy. Like I can have a couple of bad things happen. Doesn't bug me too much, but sometimes you can have a tough go. Maybe it's a con, maybe it's a printing issue, maybe all the wrong books went to the customers. We all know these things can happen. But my question is this: why didn't we stop when those barriers happened? And I'm going to go to KJ first, because I know you've had some ups and downs. We've talked about it. So my question to you is this: why didn't you stop?
Because I've always seen this as a marathon first. And then there's that other thing, I guess I've been saying. I don't know what else I would do if comics weren't in my life. Comics have been a part of my life and my passion, like I said, for 30, almost 40 years. I mean, this is, yeah. The idea of giving up on everything that I built so far, and the idea, like we talked, the whole question of the why. This whole thing has been, I wanted to build my own sandbox with my own toys that I can play with for the rest of my life. And if this book doesn't work out right now, and maybe in a few years, I do a different slant on the Resistance or any of the number of projects I have.
You believe in your project, and it's all or nothing in your case, yeah?
I mean, I love my project. It's that thing about you have to be your own super fan.
Sure.
It's you're making the book you want to read, and I feel no one else is making this book that grabs all the greatest things that I loved about X-Men, G.I. Joe, and Star Wars.
Yeah.
And like the only way I'm going to continue to be able to see this book is if I make it. So
Gotcha.
if no one else is going to make it, I got to do it myself. So
this book's going to make it. You got a great book, AJ. So Jerry, same thing for you, right? And first, maybe if you could give us an example, because you're relatively new to the comics. Have you had any kind of setbacks happen, particularly if it was during the campaign?
I mean, no. I'm too new to it. I'm sure I will. Yeah, I think that like
you're pretty positive too. I sense you're another positive attitude guy.
I am. I've been very lucky in life generally, and people get mad at me about it. But like I haven't had a big roadblock yet. I'm new to it, and I think like I've been watching Kickstarter for a long time. I'm a big backer of other projects, and so I see the trends of like there were fewer people doing this on Kickstarter just a few months ago. People were like, I'm positive that if I had launched my book, if any of us had launched our projects a year ago, a year and a half ago, you'd be hitting your numbers a lot more easily, and I think
I delayed mine. I looked yesterday, and maybe it was 2 days ago. It's 313 live projects right now.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's deep water to jump in, man.
Yeah, and bigger fish fish are in that water.
That's a good question.
I think when I started, and I'm sorry I don't have any data on this, but I got to guess that when I started, it was a little more than half that, probably 200 maybe, and even that's not the best odds. Yeah. But when you think of somebody,
go ahead. Sorry,
I was going to say, when you talk about somebody has to scroll through quite a few projects if they're just browsing. The hope always is that we can build our following, and that, my people tend to follow me, and that's what I'm trying to do. And that's why we do podcasts and all this other stuff, is to branch out with your either brand. Right. And speaking of which, Pops is going to mention this. One of the projects that were mentioned, I'll definitely offer this to you guys. If you ever have any interest in advertising your brand on a show or to run your own show, anything like that, we have something like that coming up. And actually, it looks like that. It's the Madness Comic Network Roku platform. What we've done, we've organized all the indie creators together who are doing podcasts and different types of creative shows, and we're going to put them on Roku. And if you're a creator that wants to make a show, you've come to the right place. Come on in. If you're a creator that wants to advertise on the show, be a sponsor, whatever, it's your brand will be the highlight of the episode. So if you have some time, please go over and check that out. That's a pretty cool project that I'm involved in now. And by the way, that's open to all creators. You could be a musician. It's anything that's in the geeky field. I know Pops will correct me. I think we just got a guy who does RC cars, radio control cars. So there's definitely neat content. We got horror, sci-fi. Oh, of course, the best one, the Creative Cranium, right? But if you get inclined, go check out the Roku platform. So what time we got? 10:25. So why don't we do this? Let's do some more shout outs here for the projects, because I want to make sure we get some exposure for these top projects. So we're going to start off here with The Resistance. We'll go around in a circle. Like I said, I'm a fan of this book. Let's see, are we funded yet? So you got some
No.
here, KJ.
And as Jerry was saying, like one of the problems, I mean, I'm looking at my last campaign that ended last year, and we're just down. Our backers are up, but the average rewards level is down. So our numbers, the totals are just not hitting where they were before. But I also
this
haven't
is
done
where
much social
I
media in
jump
the last
in.
year.
This is where I jump in and I tell you guys what I do. You guys, we have a Facebook group called the Comic Related Madness. It's for networking and promotion, and we encourage people with live campaigns to come drop their link once a day over there. Once a day.
Group.
Okay.
Good group.
2,600 people, and it's all comic people. Okay, some are creators, some are fans, some, you got networking going on, but no crap. It's just networking and promotion. That's what the group is for. And I encourage you guys to get known over there, because a lot of books are backed out of that group, man.
Yeah.
Out
It's a
of
good
the
group.
stuff you do, so be part of the madness, man. I can't emphasize more. And I went from a little Facebook group to a YouTube channel to a YouTube network, and now it's growing into a Roku channel, a Roku platform. I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing, which is promoting what people like you guys do. Okay, so come over to the Facebook group, drop your links once a day, let people know you're there, what you're doing. The scroll goes pretty fast when everybody's dropping a link once a day, or their shows or whatever. Okay, the scroll goes pretty fast. So that's why I say at least once a day, guys.
Yeah. Comic Related Madness. It's a great group. Pops is right. Definitely recommend it. Please join. You'll see me over there pretty regular. Thanks, Pops. Yep. Good call, man. Good call. So you guys are definitely invited, and that's literally all they do is support each other. And
I believe I'm part of the group.
yeah, I think I see you in there.
Yeah.
I like those guys, and it's this when I do the show, they put me out on something like, I think it's 10 channels now.
Oh wow. Okay.
So they take care of me. But let's, like I say, I want to get off track, man. We got to encourage customers. Let's go check out The Resistance.
Yeah, there's a week left. Ends next Friday. We have some really awesome exclusives in it too. We have a G.I. Joe figure cover, homage cover.
I'm gonna scroll.
So
Do you want to show that? Let's see that real quick.
I think if you scroll down.
This book looks great, KJ.
So yeah, you get free stickers
There you
with
go.
there's the homage cover.
That's
But
really
it looks
cool,
like
man.
the old G.I. Joe O-ring figure, but it's
Yeah.
the Resistance interval. That's done by an artist, Brad Thingvold. He's a traditional and digital artist. The art is done by Jason Johnson, who got to start with Jim Lee back in the day at Wildstorm Studios. Worked on books like Gen 13 and Wetworks, and did some Flash and Impulse, and he's just killing it on this. And our new colorist, Emmanuel Ordez Torres, is really just, his hues are just popping. It's really just, it's funny. I'm just so proud to be a part of this, that they let me be a part of my project.
Listen, man, I admire your humility, and I love the way that you approach this. Viewers, if you're looking for a quality book, I got to say, this does not look like an indie book. It probably sounds like I'm shilling, but as you know, I don't back everybody's Kickstarter project, but I have a couple of these, and even some of the other series. They're good. That's why.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. And the book's completed at this point. All 24 pages of the story. The book is 40 pages because I love to do all that back matter and
giant size, baby.
I like to call them. We did a guidebook last year, and so we have like a bunch of new entries.
Yeah, that's the one I got. That's really cool.
Stuff.
Yeah, I got that one. Yeah.
Thanks.
By the way, you better look. Tim Fling's gonna be copping you on that one too. I want to do. I want to do a Water Wars guidebook.
If as I said, I'm available for hire for lettering and production.
You know
I can
what,
put
man?
it together for you.
You know what, man?
want.
Let's get
Just reach
together.
out.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
get together. We'll figure something out. So let's jump over to Cicada Samurai. You know, I was aware of this book before I had met Jerry, and the first thing that stuck out to me was, number one, I loved the title, and it has like a really cool sort of mystique, right? Like, as you guys know, I dig Asian characters. I live in an Asian house, all that, and I write a fair amount of Asian literature myself. But it jumped out at me, right? It's got all the things I like. It's got bugs, it's got violence, it's got cicadas, it's got originality. So, Jerry, tell us a little bit more about it. Give us a quick pitch, and tell us. So you funded 37? Yeah, you got it. Congrats.
Yeah, I'm passed. Yeah, we're in. Everyone's getting the book. Guaranteed.
Nice.
Guaranteed, you're getting the book.
Sweet.
Yeah, I mean, it's on its face, it's a story about an immortal cicada with magical samurai powers, and his job is to protect millions of other cicadas so that they can propagate the species and they can keep living. But like underneath it, he's the lone adult. He's the only person with any life experience. So it's kind of a parenting story. And he's got all these like rowdy teenagers who are basically all going out on prom night at the same time. And he's got to try and keep as many of them alive as possible. And there's a lot of horror elements to it. The monsters that he fights are based on animals and insects and things like that.
What type of monsters might we see in this title?
Well, in this story, it's a raven. It's a gigantic, bloodthirsty raven who's just a hungry animal. That's all he is. And then, but there's a real thing in the world called a cicada killing hornet. It's the size of a cicada. It'll catch a cicada in mid-flight, stab it, like paralyze it with a stinger, drag it back to its burrow, and now it's paralyzed but alive, and then it'll lay eggs around it and seal it up in the burrow. And when the little monster hornets hatch, they eat the cicada, and they know not to eat any vital organs, so they'll eat it alive for days afterwards. It's
Jerry, please don't be offended,
thing.
but it's a little bit weird that you know this.
I got obsessed with I got obsessed with them. I read about this thing, and I was like, right away, I'm like, that's a comic book villain. That's a monster.
Nice.
That thing. So yeah, it's horrible, scary. There are monsters in the world, and in this book, they're real, and he's got to try and protect them from them.
Terrific. Well, you mentioned that it's your first book, man. Welcome to the club, right? And I wish you every success. I'm glad it funded because I'm curious to see what's going to happen with this book. I think you got a very original take. Wish you every success, Jerry.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And let's jump over to Vikings, right? I want to talk about this a little bit more too. I am a sucker for historical dramas. I've always been that way. Phoebe, tell us a little bit more about the book and sort of your pitch.
It's filled with interesting factoids that we stayed away from fictionalizing and fantasizing the gore and violence of the Viking Age, which may be things I explore in other books. But the art itself is. Could you scroll down on this to show some of the artwork that we're offering? So I just got in the mail this week, and that's why it's taking me a minute to process it. Oh, it's under rewards. We look at the rewards. If we could go down, that's the cover that we just passed. But yeah, these are original drawings that I have done in pencil and ink, sent to me by Jose, that we're selling them. I still have another like 6 at least to post. That
you really ship to anywhere in the world?
I will. Yeah.
Oh, good for you. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I put a fair tax on the delivery there though too.
Sure.
But yeah. So yeah, the art is what I think is the best part of this book, and you could probably find the history anywhere if you're obsessive about Vikings, and you'll already know some of this stuff if you're obsessive about Vikings. But the reason to buy this comic book is for this art and to support Jose in his creation of this book.
Cool. Well, Phoebe, you too. I wish you every success with it. I think it sounds like a fascinating idea.
Oh, and I wanted to say about, I think you had mentioned about the 280 people or 300 people that are live campaigns or whatever.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Haas, who connected me with this podcast, and I think a few of us probably know. Yeah. He refers to this time, October to November, as the gamut. Like that, if you're running a Kickstarter in October, you're running the gamut. Like, you're fucking with the hardest part of Kickstarter, the hardest month to sell on Kickstarter.
Really?
Yeah,
what's-
because people don't want to spend money in October. They're saving for Thanksgiving and Christmas.
So when is the good time? When is the
The,
right
the
time?
good time would have
Yeah.
been like late August, September, maybe.
Okay.
That's what I've heard too.
Oh no, no,
Yeah.
no, no. Tax time is the best time, baby.
Yeah, tax time.
April?
Oh yes, you want your book to come out in April, bro, when people are getting that return.
Okay.
Come on, man. That's when people
The
got
disposable
money to
income.
spend,
I mean,
right? That's
Yeah.
when you want your big event of the year to happen, is when they all got money to spend. So
I delayed mine. Like I say, I
paperback
didn't.
or whatever, your trade or whatever, you want to put that out next time,
okay.
Oh, wait. I think the word was gauntlet. He called it the
Yeah,
gauntlet, not
gauntlet.
the
Oh,
gauntlet.
okay, gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha.
That sounds
Yeah.
about right too. It does. It's hard to sell before Christmas. It
Yeah.
really is.
So Phoebe and Jerry, you guys are both repped by Jeffrey Haas.
We
I
know-
work with Jeff a lot.
Oh, great.
We
great.
know
Yeah, he's a buddy of mine. I've actually been on his podcast a couple of times.
Yeah, Across the Stars. Jeffrey is a writer that writes a book on 123 Go Publications.
Sure, he's Terminus, right? Isn't he the Terminus guy?
Yeah, no, but on 123 Go, he puts out Moloch Reigning Devill.
Oh, I don't think I know that one.
I'll send you some PDFs.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great.
All right,
So-
so we'll get back out the way. I always got to pop in when I got something to say.
That's good. Man, I appreciate the producer. Thanks for putting up the links.
You bet.
Thanks, man. I like to talk to the guests and stuff, so sometimes I fall behind on posting links, and like it's kind of just me usually. So, but hey, guys and girls, we have just about reached our time, and I want to say something real quick. This has been a fun group for me. I can't believe it's a little over an hour and a half. I could have gone to
Right.
probably 3 hours asking you these questions. I really appreciate you taking the time to answer and to share your knowledge with the group, and to the viewers, thanks for tuning in. So before we say goodbye, would anybody like to share any parting thoughts? KJ, I'll start with you.
Oh, I guess I didn't get to chime in on the whole page rate thing.
Yeah, let's
But
hear
yeah,
it, man.
a lot
I
of
wanna hear
just
it.
what everyone said. I think the problem with saying what you're paying another artist is you don't know if the next project you're going to have the same budget, and you might not be able to negotiate that same rate. And so I think that's why most of the people kind of keep quiet about it.
Yeah.
I do know from talking to a lot of people and reading a lot and whatnot, the mid indie companies, they only pay about $150 a page. Like somebody like IDW,
Right.
for some of even their biggest books like Turtles, they pay
that a
about
colored page?
$150 a page.
Is that a
no,
colored
that's
page?
line art.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And I've paid more than that, and Jason Johnson gets more than that, but I've also paid less. So I think it's negotiating what the project is at the time.
Yeah.
But I guess.
thanks-
And
thanks
thank
for-
you so much for having us on the show. And
Yeah, man,
Jerry,
you guys did
it's been a lot
great,
of fun
and
talking to you guys, and-
this is a really positive group. You can feel the energy,
Yeah.
right? So first, let me tell
Definitely.
you, you guys are always welcome. This is kind of how we build our creative stable, right? And Jerry, I'm going to swing over to you. Do you have any parting thoughts you'd like to share?
I just want to say thank you, and also all, like, for me coming into this brand new to the whole thing and jumping into Kickstarter for the first time, the entire community, and maybe it's just the community of people who like to help crowdfund comics. There's like an altruistic streak. Everyone has been so nice. It's weird, if I'm being honest.
Sure is
I'm
different
not
than TV, right?
Oh, TV. I grew up in
Ooh.
Brooklyn, in New York. Like I grew up in like a loud Italian family of ball busters. Like this is not usual for me. And like, but I'm loving it. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And Phoebe, you get the final word. Anything you'd like to share with the audience before we go?
indieplanet.com /123go. That's where you can get our books that are already available.
Cool.
Viking Saga of the North. Let's Go Jersey Devils. Let's Go New York Liberty. And thank you so much for having me. I hope to come back sometime soon.
Well, it's a pleasure. And I will stay in touch with you guys. We're going to jump off now, viewers, but I look forward to seeing you next Friday night. This has been an episode of The Creative Cranium. Thanks and good night, everybody.
Bye.